Is it worse? It is worse. It is the worst it has been right now. If it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen soon. Interesting, Dylan. Interesting. Dylan started a war in Jade's Minecraft server. He is a part of the North faction, so you could call it the War of the Northern Aggression. Can I jump in real quick? Yeah, you can. The War of Northern Aggression, huh? Alright. You can call me on Discord or jump anywhere into my server. Either one. Pick. Howdy.
Hey. Oof, man, this is a little crazy, isn't it? All of this Ukraine stuff, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been keeping up with it as much as I should be, but it seems pretty weird.
Yeah, and the takes, my God, the takes have been terrible.
The takes have been interesting. I want to hear what takes you think are terrible.
Okay, so the worst take is anyone saying this is America's fault. No, the absolute worst take is somebody saying this is America's fault, not Russia's fault. The second worst take is like, oh, like America and Russia did this, like, made the situation together, yada yada yada. The best take is like it's 90% Russia, 10% America, right?
Okay.
That's like the best take. And this has to do with a whole bunch of factors. I can get into specifics if you want me to.
Yeah, get into specifics. Go for it.
Okay, so do you know about the Budapest referendum, which is something that nobody else brings up, but I'm always gonna bring up?
Yeah, okay? There was a person in my chat room who kept spamming it instead of
because if you know anything about like Ukraine at all, if you know anything about the history of Ukraine and you're actually somewhat knowledgeable, this is something you should immediately bring up because no one else brings it up because it's from the 90s and nobody wants to go that far in the Wikipedia scrolling that everyone's been doing the last 2 days. And I can't use the R word anymore. Anyway, no. I can't look. Let me just say they're not retarded, okay? Because I would never call anybody that because I don't use the R slur. I don't use it because I don't. That's why I wouldn't call them flaming retards.
Jesus Christ,
because no, I'm against using it. I'm telling you, I'm against it. I would not do that. Anyway, so the problem is that in 1994, Ukraine had one of the largest nuclear arsenals in the world after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And if there's one way to guarantee your territorial sovereignty, it's to have nukes. North Korea has proved this. Russia, America's proved it. Like, there's no scenario where Russia actually invades America, America actually invades Russia. Okay, people will like have wet dreams about it and like soy out about it and like military strategy, but the odds of that happening are so minuscule due to the fact that everybody has these like red lines in the sands with nukes, and like if you're invaded, like there's a decent chance your opponent might actually just use nuclear weapons, either in the field or like targeting your cities, right?
Yep.
And so Ukraine basically had territorial guarantee with these nuclear weapons, but there's a bunch of factors pushing Ukraine to get rid of its nuclear weapons. One, and this is the one I'll point to a lot, is if you're a post-Soviet country, like the Soviet Union, and a lot of like I think neolibs don't like acknowledging this. Not a lot, but there are some that would like to not hear this, is that the standard of living plummeted post-Soviet collapse, right? And that's not good. That's not saying that the Soviet model was like the best economy or anything. I'm just saying that if you have a bunch of economic instability, it doesn't really matter what the economic model was. It's usually going to be worse, right? And like they had a lot of things guaranteed and people weren't used to this new system and people getting scammed left and right. It was really terrible, right?
Yep.
And so with the economy and such shitters, how is Ukraine, this country which has a real issue with poverty, going to be funding one of the largest nuclear arsenals in the world and keeping it up to date so they don't have another nuclear disaster, because Chernobyl is fresh in the minds of these people. I mean, this is 1994, man. Chernobyl's right there, right? And so with that in consideration, as also them wanting to like add like legitimacy to their government internationally and a bunch of other factors we don't need to get into, right? They decided to sign a referendum, being one of the few countries in history, just like South Africa, to actually willingly just give up their nukes, right?
Yeah.
And they did it under the guarantee from Russia and other countries that no one would infringe upon Ukraine's territory.
Yeah.
And Russia signed in 1994 they would not infringe upon Ukrainian territory recognized by the international community, like for example Crimea or Donbass, right?
Yep.
And the Luhansk region. I don't know how to do all the pronunciations perfectly, but obviously this has come to bite the Ukrainians in the ass, because if they did have nukes, it'd be probably very difficult for the Russian government to do what they're doing right now, right?
Yeah.
And they would not be able to touch it. So a lot of people are looking towards that, and this is something I would point towards and say, hey, look, you can say that there was an off-paper vocal promise of no NATO expansion, but when it comes to international law, and this is the 10% I give to America, is that private promise of NATO expansion. Um, when it comes to international law, what's put on paper and signed, that's really what matters at the end of the day, right?
Uh-huh.
Because there's been a million times in like missile negotiations, like missile control negotiations between America and China, or negotiation about Taiwan, where people will make vocal commitments, but not written commitments. So they have at least some wiggle room. And so everyone knows that that written down commitment is when you really like, you get it.
Mm-hmm.
And so as much as I do think it was shitty, that's what matters so much more to me. And it's not necessarily even like Ukraine's fault that America expanded into places like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. If anything, I would say it was the Soviet Union's fault for leaving such terrible memories in places like Czechoslovakia and Hungary, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I think NATO was able to easily expand, because the communist dictatorships of places like Romania are not exactly fondly remembered by the majority of the people there. There are certain people who it's better, worse off for now, and was better off then, that don't remember it. Don't remember it so badly. I'm not gonna like just like be a hack about it, but most people don't, and so that is the main thing I would point to as to why I think Russia's at fault. I would also point to the fact that they invaded Crimea without saying they were invading Crimea, and then the two options they gave for a non-internationally monitored referendum in Crimea on whether they wanted to be in Crimea, both options, no matter what happened, would have weakened the Ukrainian central government. They didn't even give them an option to return to the status quo. That wasn't even an option on the referendum. And a lot of like the local like ethnic
So,
minorities of the
well,
area like boycotted it. And so that's why I don't really like most people respect that fucking vote. You were gonna ask a question?
yeah,
I sorry.
yeah.
There's
So
so much
I had
history to
a,
get in
yeah, I
here.
had
I'm
a
sorry.
couple questions about the referendum because I'm not sure if you saw it, but for instance, like Hassan used the referendum as a
95%. It's literally like Assad numbers.
Mhm. And so yeah, people so like Hassan used that referendum to justify why like
Yeah.
Crimea
So
belonged.
that is
Yeah.
what I would call a fucking stupid,
Hmm.
ignorant, and probably also very fucking gross. Like go fuck yourself,
Hmm.
actually. It's the type of person like it's dragging in front of a crying Ukrainian mother had to watch her son come home in a coffin. Fuck you, right?
Mm.
Um, the problem is, could you imagine if there, let's say, we invaded like or I'm trying to think of a better example. Let's say that there was an invasion of like let's say there was some like very racist I'm trying to okay, let me think of the best analogy. So imagine there's two problems here, okay? And let me combine these two problems. So the first problem is you have an invading force controlling the referendum
Hmm.
on whether they should be part of Russia or not. And both options, neither of which would have returned to status quo. Either one was become part of Russia, and the other one was basically have more separate independence from the central authority. Like nothing, none of it was even an option to return to the status quo, which that's fucked. And it's not internationally monitored in these widespread like allegations of like fraud and stuff, blah, 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 right? So
Yeah.
that's the first problem. So I don't really think it was a fair referendum. And two, like there was a bunch of minority groups and Kiev like loyal people who just straight up boycotted the thing because they didn't respect it as legitimate, just like the international community, and they weren't going to participate in it. So that would be like saying like bragging if like Trump bragged about like winning 90% of the vote, and then we like heard that like all black and Latino people like decided to boycott, and women decided to boycott the last election.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
I'd be
that
like, I don't know if that's really bragging rights right now, right?
mm-hmm.
And that's not to say that if there was to be a referendum, just straight up normal, fair, safe referendum, that I would even be against it. Like against the idea of like Crimea being part of Russia or having some like Northern Ireland type situation or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's it's the blatant disregard for international law and like norms and the local, like them controlling the vote and them doing it by force. Not to mention the invasion was so like, we are not invading, we are not invading. Those people with unmarked uniforms that they just took the Russians flag off the uniforms, we are not okay, we invaded. And then
Mm-hmm.
once everything was settled, that's when they just admitted it, right? So they lied on the international stage and just invaded, right? um and then there, of course, there is the supporting of the rebels in Donetsk and like the Donbass area, basically. And yeah, I mean, if anybody was to look at that situation and say, actually, that Crimea annexation is totally legitimate. It's not legitimate due to standards of international law. It's not legitimate when it comes to the rights of local minority groups and participation of elections. It's not right when it comes to monitorance of the election. And you also just don't. That's not how you do. You don't just like just throw a bunch of troops at an area and say, yep, this is, we are now taking it over because we're taking it over. Like this isn't how you settle things. But that I'm still, in principle, wouldn't be against the idea. It's just like they would about it in all of the worst possible ways. There's a decent chance that if they just had a straight up vote, if Ukraine was going in one direction and Russia was going in another, when like Ukraine going more towards the west and Russia going more towards, its own model, that Crimea could choose to go with Russia and be part of Russia. And
For
I think that's
sure.
perfectly legitimate. I believe the people have a right to rule themselves. I mean, it is a mostly Russian speaking area, right? It wouldn't be that surprising. But this is just not how you do that.
For sure. Earlier you said it's a 90-10. Can you tell me where the 10 comes from on
The
the
10, the 10 for me,
Mhm.
probably comes from the fact that the United States there, and there's some conflicting reports about this,
Mhm.
but if somebody has other information, they can correct me because I'm not an expert in European history. Everything I'm telling you is something that I've learned from other experts, and I'm not an expert in this, blah 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 blah,
Yeah.
blah, right? When I say other experts, that's not to imply I'm an expert, for people who are experts. Um,
Sure.
sorry, I'm being very specific, but I really want to be. Um, but from what I know, the United States made a verbal guarantee, or at least an official representing the United States made a verbal guarantee. I believe it was Gorbachev, that America would not expand NATO towards like Russian, like the Russia sphere of area. Right now, it was never written down,
Yeah.
but I think that's the 10%. I
Okay.
think that it is a nation should engage with its people, like its geopolitical foes and geopolitical like allies and everyone, truthfully and
Sure. Yeah.
honestly, and they shouldn't lie or try to misrepresent intentions and or make promises even verbally that they cannot fulfill.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think if what you're saying is true, I don't disagree that
Now,
there's some
so
shit to that.
now I would also say on the other end that it is a nation is sovereign. A nation's people can choose to ally with one economic bloc like the European Union or or NATO or with other, or even Russia's model and Russia's alliances and Russia's economic systems. Every nation has the right to do that of their own will. And much of this is Russia reaping what it sowed. Vladimir Putin, I'm nerding out as fuck right now, wrote like an article about the situation. He basically wrote like a very long blog post, basically
Mm-hmm.
saying how Ukraine must be an ally of Russia is basically what it says.
Mm-hmm.
And large parts of it is is him like trying to justify it through a bunch of different means. But there was one part of it where he even basically at the start he's like, I know if there's been some he's basically said, I know there's been some issues, I know there's been some problems. And the fact that Vladimir Putin had to admit in a video essay, not a video essay, but like an essay, and I could send you the essay, it's an extremely interesting read. It's really nerdy though, so you probably won't read it. Um, but he had to admit that there were problems, shows that during the Euromaidan protest movement, there were 100% were problems, which was a protest movement in 2014 where a Kremlin-backed and generally seen as pro-Russia leader of Ukraine basically left the country after a massive protest movement against his policies, corruption, pro-Russian ties, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And even him having to admit that there were problems just shows that he knows, and in a way, he's pushed them towards the West. He still tries to say it's majorly the West doing this, manipulating Ukrainian people. But this is the story with a lot of countries. Ukraine is not only one example, but you could point towards Hungary, was a Soviet state. That even though it's led by Viktor Orban, its people are still generally more pro-West, and it is part of Western power structures in many ways. The former Czechoslovakia states, the Poland, of course, the rest of Germany, East Germany, a lot of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, especially these countries, since they border Russia, and they are especially scared due to certain like Russian military drills that people would do. We do military drills in the area too, but these states were pushed away either through the violence we saw in Czechoslovakia, Hungary, human rights abuses, direct Soviet control and influence on their politics, just disagreeing with the structures and models, wanting to participate in separate economic systems. They pushed these countries away. And so I'm going to be honest, you shouldn't be so surprised if you push these countries away that they want to ally with a separate force, especially if you're doing like we're seeing in, Ukraine or Georgia. And
Mm-hmm.
Georgia's a totally separate conflict. I can't even get into it.
Okay. So earlier we kind of agreed about the spoken agreement for NATO to not get near the like a Russian sphere of influence. Where would you say that agreement like starts and ends for like where it's too much for NATO to
For me, like what do you mean like too much for NATO to what?
like given the agreement that there was if there was an agreement about NATO not expanding
Yeah, the
into
verbal agreement. Yeah.
yeah the
Well, I
verbal
would say
agreement.
that agreement is basically trash now. I'm
Yeah,
gonna be
yeah.
completely
I'm
honest.
just saying, like, if it wasn't trash, how far east could NATO
I
go in
I
Europe? Would you
don't
say?
know. I guess for me, if they were going to stop NATO expansion, I think there would need to be a bunch of different security assurances given between Russia and America and the West and all of these newly independent countries. But as we've seen in 1994 Budapest referendum, how much would those security assurances even matter?
Yeah,
Because it seems like those security assurances started to turn into dog shit. Now, someone could say, well, it turned into dog shit because of NATO expansion. But if these countries definitely when you say the Euromaidan protests, a lot of it had to do with European Union economic expansion and stuff like that. That isn't, we can't really tell the future. So it's still possible that this stuff could have still happened. Um, Maybe less likely, but it could have still happened. And then there's also the fact that, like, if a sovereign country determines that it wants to be part of a military alliance and its people want that, the polling indicates that, they vote in a certain way to indicate that, and they elect leaders to do it. I mean, what is one country's right to tell that other country they cannot join said alliance, or even the European Union, an economic structure, which was actually an issue for Russia, the idea of Ukraine joining the European Union,
yeah,
which I mean that is fucking ridiculous on
yeah.
its face.
Um. So then, let's assume that the agreement hadn't been like shot on.
But I would say, fuck, I'm sorry, I didn't completely answer your question. So I would say it would have to be overlapping security assurances. Maybe Russia. I mean, some people would make the argument you could avoid this whole thing if Russia just, like, Putin wasn't a thing, maybe, and like Russia started, more aligning with the West. But I also think that there could be ways to do it. It would have been really complicated, and I don't think I'm educated enough to tell you how they could have avoided this situation, or like the idea of these countries' territorial sovereignty being imposed upon without the expansion of NATO. Because let's say Putin was still president of Russia and we didn't expand NATO, couldn't people make the argument then, well, thank goodness NATO expanded, because if it didn't, what would happen to Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland?
Sure.
But now that they're in NATO, these countries are safe. If anything, the expansion of NATO reduced damage. And both arguments are actually kind of compelling to me. So I don't know if I've completely made up my mind, but this recent event has, kind of pushed me in a certain direction, which is, I would say, uncharacteristic of me.
Mm-hmm. Um. Okay. So, with that then being the 10% and the 90% there, uh, I guess
Do you
then
think that? Do you think that's a justified kind of reasoning I'm giving?
Yeah, I
What do
mean,
you think the 90 to 10% makes sense?
I mean, I don't know literally anything about the history of any of these places and shit like
Gotcha.
that. Um, I literally was like one of those people, like I said, who the Budapest shit was linked to me like the first day I talked about it by one of the people in my chat, and it seemed pretty fucked, based not
Yeah.
only on what I read and what you seem to have said. It's seemed pretty fucked up that happened, and yeah, so that was a pretty big deal. But the and I agree, I haven't seen anybody else talk about it. But the um, I'm like the 90-10 thing for me is just like I don't know where the numbers would lie for me. I don't know what the
Yeah,
numbers.
it's not the specific numbers are
Yeah,
not
of
really
course.
that necessary. I'm
Hmm.
just throwing out an arbitrary percentage to give somebody like a
Yeah.
visual of how I view it. Um,
Based on what you've told me, the 90-10 makes sense. However, from my given perspective, I
wow,
just
that's a large penis and shit.
the
Sorry, it spoke to me.
yeah it's the based on any information that I have, it's just not like there's yeah, I couldn't possibly make like any a similar claim because I'm not working with enough information, right? Many of
Yeah, I
the things
gotcha.
that 90% of the shit that you just told me is brand new information to me, right?
Gotcha.
um I heard about the referendum and shit like that through Hassan's coverage as legitimizing the annexation of
Yeah,
Crimea.
but the
Crimea.
problem is, I would say the more don't you if somebody was to really try to find a justification for it, I think the better justification would be looking at trying to find polling data
Yeah.
or something separate from the referendum to try to justify it. But then I would also make the argument that there have been people who have left Crimea since the annexation for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
So if you just poll the people who are now currently living it, you're not even including people who are excluded from the area. But whatever. It's very it's like the idea of like determine the future of Israel Palestine and only let the people within Israel vote. It's like, well, there are Palestinians within Israel, but there's a lot of Palestinian refugees in Jordan
Yeah.
and in Lebanon and other countries that have been affected by this and have been expelled from their historical territory and their homeland, and they should have some of a say in this. And I don't think it's right that they don't have a say. And I feel that I would feel the same way in this situation about Ukrainians that left Crimea post annexation. Because if you look at the polling data I've seen, it seems that since the annexation, support for being part of Russia, polling data wise, has gone up
Mm-hmm.
among even minority groups that are there. But that to me, I think that also has to do with the fact that a lot of people left.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I mean, that makes sense.
If you were to ask me though, and this is the part that makes it complicated, of course, if they were to have just a straight out vote with everybody who lives in Crimea, Russia or Ukraine, if Ukraine's heading towards the west, which it seems like they want to do, and Russia's heading in its own direction, I would probably put like $10. I'm not 100% certain, but I'm like I think this is how it would go. Like this is me guessing. I'm not a fortune teller. That they would probably vote in the favor of being part of Russia if you would have really pushed me on it.
Okay. And so would if
Which I think is inconvenient for a lot of Western commentators because everything else is so clearly against Russia. But it is also true that if this stuff cannot be resolved, and one place goes in this direction, one place goes the other direction, and Ukraine stops being brother or sister countries with Russia, that's probably how it would go in an actual 100%
so then
referendum.
I have potentially a question, then a follow-up question. Then would you say if they had that referendum or they had that vote, they did it democratically, everything was above bar, everything was perfectly fine, would you say then, and that they wanted to be a part of Russia, would you say then that Crimea being a part of Russia or something is a justified thing? That's an okay thing?
100%,
Mm-hmm.
100%,
Okay.
100%.
So then my question
I hold this position morally for basically true for most places on the planet.
I could understand why that would probably be the case. So then my question would be like, how small does this, like, on what level does this operate? Like how on what small of a scale? Let's say one like small city right? A very small town wanted to
Yeah, this is
become a
this is the complicated question. I guess for me, it has to go to a point where it could generally function as like a state. Like it has to be large enough to function as a state, right?
okay.
I guess would be my size. For example, like a single house couldn't function as a state,
Of course
obviously,
not. Yeah.
right? And a certain, there are some areas where I think a single city could function as a state, and if it really wanted to be independent, I guess it could. This actually already exists. We see that with the Vatican, so that's not even. So I guess for me, just as long as it fulfills that requirement, then it would be fine. This, like, I think is important to stop, like, the idea that literally, like, if you're a secessionist of one, like, but micronations exist, but everybody treats them like jokes anyway. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So I would say that's generally, I guess, my personal standard. I mean,
Okay.
I think it makes the most sense.
I think that makes sense. With that being the case, though, let's take in this situation if they had decided to, become a part of Russia, Crimea did. What would happen to Ukraine? Would they just lose a chunk of their land? My Discord, not yours.
I mean,
Or would they be compensated, or because they would lose a part of their
I
economy, a part of their
I mean,
infrastructure?
I don't know. I mean, they would have to find the specifics of it, but I find the idea. Let's say that Ukraine, they would say, we can't compensate you, we can't afford it. I find the idea that they would be like, well, then we're going to hold on to this territory that wants to leave until you
Mm-hmm.
pay us. I find that prospect concerning, but I could understand.
What
Like, I
about
would hope
Russia paying for it?
Russia paying for it. Well, again, my same thing would apply. That the idea of a country saying we will not
Mm-hmm.
let this part of our country leave until you pay X amount of money is a concerning idea because that means there's a price tag on that sovereignty. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
not against it inherently. Like I understand it, and I could see a country do it. And I would even say in some situations it might make more sense. But if we had to come to that impasse of either it doesn't happen with no payment or it happens with payment, I would say that it makes sovereignty matters more to me.
Okay, so I'm talking more from a moral position, right? So
I would say
morally,
it would make I would say it would make sense. I would say it would make sense for Russia to compensate for some extent.
yeah, because
But I haven't
Mhm.
really thought about this. My position might change on this.
Okay, yeah, because just the way that I look at it is, so a simple angle that you could take where in which they don't have to compensate them is the kind of idea that any faction or area inside of your country that might want to defect or secede or whatever to another country probably isn't feeling well represented by your government, and therefore it's justified in and of that at that moment. But the thing that I would also be trying to avoid is that whenever countries undergo a time of hardship, just saying, okay, you're undergoing a time of hardship, and then the big boys, America, China, and Russia just go, okay, just give us your land. Then just vote to give us your land because you went through I
Yeah,
don't
of
know.
course. I think the important part. So what you're saying is like if a country is going through, okay, let me make the argument about this then. But I think this is just naturally how most things happen. For example, let's Northern Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
If you check recent polling, now due to historical immigration and colonialization of the UK of Northern Ireland, which used to be primarily I guess loyal to some united Irish da 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 state or maybe idea, but due to that immigration and colonialism, it is now the majority of its population want to be part of the United Kingdom, and
Mm-hmm.
so part of the Good Friday Agreement was the idea that the Irish people of Northern Ireland would have a vote every once in a while, a referendum on if they wanted to join the Republic of Ireland and be one united Ireland. And a lot of Irish Republicans and a lot of people fought for that cause for a very long time. And recently, with the European Union exit and everything, the majority of Northern Irish people wanted to stay within the European Union because one, they were worried about how upholding the Good Friday Agreement, a bunch of complicated issues, but they wanted to be within it.
Mm-hmm.
And as they left, and as there's been some problems, there's people have seen a lot of air breathed into the idea of Irish republicanism in the north again, and you've even seen some increases in polling data that I've seen to show that like there's been a support for United Ireland on the rise again. And so let's say this situation, they had a vote and then people chose to leave the state. Um, these like drifting of ties and you don't really agree with the economic system or way someone's headed and trying to separate, like this is how countries make and break all the time, like historically at least. It's not like a crazy like concept.
Okay.
I mean, if one people have a value of free trade and free movement between the continent and da 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 da, it would make more sense for them to be part of the rest of Ireland for economic reasons and work visas and all this other stuff. Then, like, why wouldn't they?
Yeah. I just, I don't know. So I'm just trying to parse this with my views of, like, for instance, Texas seceding, because Texas wants to. At moments, there's people in Texas that want to secede, right?
Of course.
And
Have they ever gotten a majority?
no, but my idea is even if they did, I wouldn't want them to. And the reason why would be because of the benefits in luxuries that we have to be able, by not being completely independent entities, the freedom of movement, the freedom of trade. That
Well,
being,
I wouldn't want them to either,
Mhm.
but I also don't think it's my place to say how they run
Of
their
course,
community.
right?
Like
And
it's
so,
like yeah.
yeah, and so for me personally, I think that it really does. I think it depends on why a group of people want
Yeah,
to
I think
secede.
that is important to me too. For example, like my one caveat for this is if somebody's like seceding for a morally bankrupt reason,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
because I think we could.
Like let's say there was a country called World, right?
Hmm.
And they wanted to secede because they wanted to do, you know, that a
Yeah,
lot. Then I would say that us stopping that, I'm perfectly fine with. But this is just like
yeah,
it would also it would depend on like what your moral position is. Like this is my argument against Southern secession because they were seceding to protect slavery.
right, right. That's something that I was going to address a little bit more finitely. Is if like somebody was seceding for a purpose that was like against our principles, like we were principally against like the people that want to make a white no state or something like that, right? If that was the express reason why I feel like restricting that autonomy is there, but yeah, I don't yeah, I guess we're saying eye to eye on that one. So
Yep.
okay, well, do you have anything else you want to say about the Ukraine situation? I feel like I have. Oh wait, before that, I wanted to meme on this. Did you see Hassan change the title of his video?
Yeah,
About
I did, and I saw nobody's been bringing it up. I did. I was right about Ukraine
Yeah,
too. Russia has yet to invade Ukraine, and the thing is, I didn't talk about Ukraine publicly really until yesterday, and
mm-hmm,
that was because the recent developments with what looks like possibly could be false flag attacks, and the idea that Ukraine attacked Russia, or the idea that oh, Ukraine's planning an invasion of Donetsk and the large scale evacuations, and now 50% of Russian troops are in a ready to attack position with 150,000 to 200,000 on the board. Like everything now is like actually like I would say this looks like what an invasion would actually play out as.
mm-hmm.
Definitely for the three-stage invasion plans that have been circling around the news outlets and stuff and journalists. So I would say that right. So when I say like right now is the closest I think I've ever seen Russia being to actually with just doing a full-scale invasion of Ukraine right now.
If Russia were to do a full scale invasion of Ukraine, what would be your prescription for Western countries? Well, that's a really broad scope. Let's start with America and just ask that.
Um, oof, man, I really don't know the answer to that question, and I wish
Okay.
I did. But I would say that I'm generally supportive of the West supporting Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
But anybody saying that we're going to go to war with Russia over this doesn't know what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody saying that um uh like that we should is also I don't think
Mm-hmm.
they know what they're talking about. I think that like sending them like arms and armaments is perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
People will talk about the Azov battalion, but not also say that the Congress banned funding the Azov battalion 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like to me, it's mostly a mute point. Not to mention, you never hear about them talk about like the neo Nazis and the Wagner group, right? Which is a Russian mercenary group, like largely pointed to for its like history of war crimes in the Central African Republic and torturing people with sledgehammers. Um,
Okay.
but like, yeah, that's like a semi rant about something else. But
Well, no, I mean, I just didn't know they existed.
yeah, I assume you've seen the Azov battalion thing come up a few times.
Probably, but I don't
The
recognize the name.
Ukrainian Nazis is what they are usually just referred to
Oh
as.
yeah, those people. That's in the video. I thought you were talking
Yeah.
about.
Also, can
Sorry,
I
I
also
interrupted you.
just
Go on.
say that people like trying to like say, oh, see the Ukrainian Nazi movement, da 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 da. The Azov Battalion has a political arm. I think it's like the National Council or some.
Mm-hmm.
They ran last election. They didn't win a single fucking MP seat.
Let's see.
0 out of 450. 2% of the vote. And you're gonna tell me this is fucking like it's a neo-Nazi government? Get the fuck out of here.
Mm-hmm. So, you believe a claim? Do you believe then that a claim that there is a strong push for neo-Nazi sentiment amongst the government of the Ukraine? Do you believe
A
that is a
strong push for neo-Nazi sentiment amongst the currently elected government of like Zelensky?
uh?
Is that what you're asking?
It's
Or
so it's just I'm
like there are
watching.
far right people in the Ukrainian government,
Of
right?
course, yeah.
And there are far right people with dubious ties to things like members and everything like that. But I would not say like Zelensky's specific, like his government, his cabinet are all like a bunch of neo Nazis and they're pushing for the neo Nazi ideology to reign supreme. In fact, I think they're very aware of how the Azov battalion is hurting them internationally. And that's why Congress put a ban on funding the Azov battalion. And I think a lot of the acceptance of the Azov battalion as like officially making them part of the like national like defense, whatever, I forget what it's called, but under the Ukrainian military's general arm, had to do with the desperate situation that Ukraine faced in 2014 after Crimea, Donetsk, Luhansk, the Donbass area, um, after the secessionist movements and the annexation of Crimea, and then Russian soldiers, the little green men, being active in their territory. I mean, like that's fucking terrifying. It's Russia, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they literally grabbed anything they could. They were less prepared in 2014 by miles than how prepared they are now. And they're not even necessarily that prepared now. I would say like Russia, if it really wanted to, it could really just steamroll um, into Kiev. Is just how costly can the Ukrainians make it for them,
Yeah,
and how long could they institute a guerrilla movement? Because they're training civilians now for a long, lastly guerrilla war,
I
and
was.
that's
Yeah,
another thing. People don't realize how long this shit would actually like go
yeah.
on if they did this.
That was gonna
People are
be.
thinking like a few months. Dude, there's gonna be explosions, IED shit, and sniper attacks for years, man.
Mm-hmm.
That's honestly, if they wanted to, if they tried to make the like permanent borders or some shit, or do like an East and West Ukraine or something shit like that, or I doubt that's what they would do, but some shit like that. Um, this could be like, I mean, we don't just no end in sight. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. Um, I was gonna ask that about potential guerrilla warfare because I feel like there's a lot of people that think that this is going to be resolved very quickly because of the size and scope of Russia's army, and I just wanted to know if there was at all a possibility, and not even
The
necessarily.
initial ground invasion, I guess it would be less like Afghanistan in 2001 because the Ukrainian military has more armaments and has javelin missiles to deal with tanks, and like it's an actual standing military. I think that has more resources at its disposal,
Yeah.
and I think the West is backing it, has an international force backing it, which is also like different. And we will actually there's a possibility of us having troops in the country to like put like a red line in the sand in the eastern parts of the country, which you have the most pro-government sentiment in the east of the country, and the west of the country. The west of the country, you have the most pro-government sentiment,
Mm-hmm.
and the most pro-Western sentiment and pro-EU sentiment. Um, but like fuck, man. Um, if that really extended out, guerrilla war would probably go on for a while, man, like a
Hmm.
while, and it would not like I'm talking like tens of thousand people could die from this, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands if it really like dragged on, man. I mean, and it's fucking terrifying to be completely honest.
Um, yeah, that
Not to
sounds.
mention the Russian military does not have a good record of exactly precise aerial bombardment.
Hmm.
They released footage bragging about their weapons, literally with footage of them bombing hospitals with the top patients inside and
Wow.
civilians. Like they don't give a. That was in Syria.
Mm. Okay. So then, I feel like I already got the answer to one of my questions in that, but is there anything else that you wanted to speak about on Ukraine?
Um, there's not really much more for me to say besides like it's a fucking human tragedy, and I hope the Biden administration does everything they can to find a diplomatic solution to this situation while not lessening Kiev's negotiating power and making sure to
On
back it.
Discord. Okay. All right. Yeah, because I don't really know enough about this situation really to really speak about it much at all. I've just been kind of observing. A thing that I'll do is if I don't know too much about the situation, I'll observe other people's like statements about a situation and try and see if it conflicts with itself. See if it stands on its own, independent of my knowledge of it, and yeah.
If you want, look, for everybody who just wants to be angry at America, and I understand you boys, okay? Look, get angry about Yemen and the Biden administration's continued support for the blockade in Yemen and the Saudi coalition in Yemen, even if it's less than Trump, even if there were some concessions, not enough, okay? Fucking famine in Yemen, fucking starvation in Yemen, and the assets of the Afghan government when there's a current famine going on in Afghanistan. There is not a ton of strategic purpose to continue to hold them, and the giving it to 9/11 families excuse was fucking piss poor, considering that one population of people are currently starving, and also in a way were victims of 9/11 through their country being torn apart for years by the same
Mm-hmm.
terror group that victimized the United States. They were the victims of the same terror group. And two, 9/11 victims, as far as I know, the large part are not going through a famine. There's not like a specific 9/11 group famine right now, 9/11 families where they're all just starving in
Mm-hmm.
the fucking like thing. That's not happening. Where that's currently happening in Afghanistan. There's a ticking time clock on one of these situations.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate your insight, buddy.
Awesome.
All right.
Also, look at this card. I've got to go around and promote this. Okay, look at this. Hippy Dippy Mania, buddy. Next Friday, the big event. 5 hours. 5 hours of content.
Five
And 1 hour
hours.
pre-show. 7 to midnight of debate. Back to back to
Jesus
back to back.
Christ. You do actually have. You got some characters on here. Haven't seen last username in a minute. Gonna be
Look at
nice.
their tag team names.
Market Market Justice Warrior versus Toontown. The cage
People
match.
can't see it. You have it on the small screen.
Oh no, my bad. Here you go.
Then we're debuting 2 tag team championship belts. So we're opening up our tag team division officially. After this, we're gonna launch the Hippy Dippy website, which is gonna show everyone's official rankings. We of course have Destiny versus
Right.
CTV. We have a cage match between Stardust and Redneck on what is racism. We have a mystery match. We have Billy the Fridge, the internet rap star, and the legend as the announcer. We have Real
Nice.
Ranton as a celebrity guest judge. We have in-team commentary. We are gonna have Titantrons. We're having shoot promo interviews filmed. We're trying to commission music and. We're going all out for this one. This is the most expensive project I've ever done.
This is cool. This is cool. I like
I
the.
just spent over $500 just last night alone trying to produce some of this.
Jesus Christ.
And that was specifically on the tag team belts, so they're fucking good.
Yeah, like, how do you do that? How do those get made?
I know a guy. I know a guy. Some things I can't tell you everything. Okay.
I think it's weird you get them actually made. Like, that's
Yep.
the real physical material.
This is also
object.
a separate model. We've chosen a different model for this one, so you can tell the distinction between a tag team champion and a real champion. We've
a real champion.
not a real champion, but the champion. You get what I'm saying, right?
Disrespecting the tag team. I see how it is.
Is the mystery match Mr. Girl versus Dr. K? Shush.
I've been fine. This is cool.
And we're also signing official Hippy Dippy contracts. We're making those now. Sansol's already signed one. We're trying to get Doomer Media to sign one. We're officially contracting. We got, of course, a recruitment show. We're gonna be having like a tribute music video, I think, made for the opener of the show, as well as some, I think, animated graphics, and we have so much under production for this. Not to mention, this is also the thing is this day is actually the 1 year anniversary of me being homeless.
Shit, really?
And then 2 days after the 25th is when I held the first ever Hippy Dippy Championship, February 27th, Bastia versus Vaush, and I made enough money off of that show to get myself a place to live.
Jesus.
And so that's why this is going to be the first ever Hippy Dippy Mania. It's for this date.
That is cool. I hope that stays consistent on this day, just for the history of it.
It could. I'm thinking if whether Mania is going to be like a 6 month, like every 6 months, or once a year. I think once a year makes more sense. Because then it's like the event you build up to.
Yeah, you definitely. I'm not gonna lie to you. You definitely got something going when you said that you wanted to make like a wrestling like vibe with the fucking cast and the people, the history, the rivalries and shit like that. I thought you were gonna do it lightweight, okay, with lightweight, but you're going really, really heavy into this. And
this is what I give a fuck about. Look at my header on my Twitter account and my Twitter description. Not to mention, also, can I tell you we're making merch? Can I tell you that?
Yeah, I don't care.
But so have you ever been a wrestling fan?
Not really.
Do you know what ECW was? Extreme Championship Wrestling?
Nope.
Wrestling? It was a very famous brand, and one of the things that they used to chant was ECW. Now, the official abbreviation that we've now started for branding purposes, it's HDC, Hippy Dippy Championship. So HDC would be the chant, and there's this guy called Nick Gage. It's like, I'm Nick fucking Cage, da-da-da. It's like a bunch of wrestling like things, but I'll see if I can. Let me send you this thing quick. We're gonna put this on shirts. We just had it like Finder done. Let me save it quick and send it over to you. I think you'll get the shirt design immediately, but we're really going all out on this shit. And I'm super fucking excited and proud. Isn't that awesome?
Hold up, let me pull. I can pull this up on stream, right?
Ooh. Okay, but then delete. Could you delete this spot if you do that?
Okay, I'm not gonna do it then.
Just bring it up on screen. I don't give.
You don't give. Are you sure? I
look, people will forget. People will forget. Don't worry about it.
People will. Are you sure? You sure you want this? I thought this was just
dude. It's fine. People will forget. It's just a shirt design. Who cares?
Okay. Okay. So you're making these? When are these going to be available?
These and a bunch of other ones are going to be available. Hopefully, like, I don't know, some point this year. But this is like very early production stuff.
Dude, you'd really be working out there, man. You'd be busting your ass, huh?
You're
putting that time in.
This means a lot to me because, again, like, without the Hippy Dippy Championship, without Hippy Dippy, I would not be the size I am. I would not be the creator I am, and I would not have a place to live, and I wouldn't be streaming full time. and there's a lot of people who helped me get here, and this vision I have I'm also extremely passionate about. When I said I wanted to do a wrestling themed like type show, when I said that, I think people were like, okay, I kind of get like, okay, like they thought it would be kind of cute or something, and I want to go as hard as I fucking am with this. I really
Mm-hmm.
want this to fucking succeed. I really want this to succeed. That's why I'm making websites. That's why I paid $500 last night to make people belts, and everybody gets to keep their belt. I don't get that money back, right? I
Mm-hmm.
am now making I am now at a net loss for Hippy Dippy.
A net
I'm probably
loss?
for off of this one, I will be a net loss because of how much I'm probably throwing at this for the
Mm.
last few Hippy Dippies. Last year, probably I would be a net profit, but now for this year, I'm starting out at a pretty large net loss. But I'm doing it as an investment, hoping that it's gonna work, that I'm gonna be
Mm-hmm.
able to reap that back, and hopefully that people will help me like pay for it through donations and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I'm throwing my everything at this right now. I mean, you got to think. I have to make. I need to pay for each belt to be made and shipped, and then
Mm-hmm.
shipped again because I need to ship it to them directly. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, it's 3 belts I got to do that for. Anytime a belt changes hands, I have to do that.
Yeah.
Anytime. So if I could go, so that means $500 on the tag team division every time by default.
Wait,
If it
hold on.
changes
So
hands.
I've actually always been curious. Do you make a new belt every time it changes hands, or do you
Yes.
request it?
So a thing is, a lot of people don't know, and this I am willing to give up information on, is that a lot of people don't know this, but boxing, wrestling, UFC, if you win a belt, you get to keep it. That
Really?
handoff and the
Almost
and
like
if
an
you
Ahrelevant
that handoff you see on screen, you go back room and they give the belt back to the other guy. And then a few months later, they'll send them the real belt that they get to keep. And the reason why, it's like a trophy. You became champion of the world. That's the whole
Mm.
point of it. But it's now such an item in the sport that it's like a thing that changes hands, and you see that happen. And so I think it was a little different in wrestling, but I liked that tradition of boxing because because
So,
I have my notorious boxing training, right?
uh-huh.
And so I love boxing a lot, and I love that tradition. And if somebody put this company that I guess I'm making, I'm trying to like formally like do all that. If somebody put this company on their back and dragged it along with me for a while, right? And I'm not paying Destiny full-time contracts. I'm not paying Vaush full-time contracts. If
Mm-hmm.
CTV wins, he might be the first person we actually put on contract. We don't
Mm-hmm.
know. But because we're looking to have people doing interviews, going out, going to shows, promoting. This is the only panel you go on possibly. We're
Mm-hmm.
looking at negotiations because this is like real shit. And for me, if um can you tell me the start of why I was stating this? I'm sorry, I'm a little high, okay?
I was just talking about the amount of work that you put into this, and then I specifically talked about the belts and the process of trading
Oh
hands
yeah.
with the belt.
And so the thing is, if these people did that work to get to this point, either growth in size or performance or anything that got them to this point, they deserve to be recognized for that. And
Yeah.
I want them to feel appreciated, and I want them to make that belt mean something. And I don't want to like be like, now you have to send it back so I can be a cheapskate. They earned it, they get to keep it. And I want them to be able to look at that belt every time they walk through their living room or wherever they put it. I
Mm-hmm.
assume right next to their like mother's ashes because of how important this belt is, okay? Every time they see that fucking belt, they remember, I love my time as Hippy Dippy champion. I love my time in Hippy Dippy. I appreciate that Dylan worked with me so professionally and that Dylan recognized what I did. And then we build a good reputation for everybody we work with. And I think that while that's costing me more money now, I'm hoping that down the line, that will buy me more reputation with other people. And that will like, people will see that I respect the people I work with.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, at the very least, it seems like you work a lot of fucking man hours to be able to put this shit up. So, and spend your money. So, yeah, I think this is really fucking cool, man. I think it's really fucking cool. I also just didn't know that shit about the belt. That's crazy that you make a belt every single time.
Every single time. And the thing is, and people, Geek has told me not to do this because he's like, don't, you're spending too much. But I'm gonna probably try to make the belt of higher and higher quality moving forward.
Yeah.
Until at least some part of it is actually made of gold.
No, that's gonna be the.
Now, I'm not saying the whole
dude.
thing is made of gold. It
Yeah.
might even just be gold. Like, you know how like some golden like things are not, they're dipped in gold. It might even just be dipped in gold. But just being able to say that, I think will add more prestige to the title and make people treat it with more respect. And when they treat that belt with respect and they treat that belt like it means something, other people treat that belt like it means something. Remember the Hippy Dippy championship match where we had a big rumble to decide who won? It was Destiny, Hunter, Demon Mama, and the Vadim thing. Do you remember this? That was the first time, I think, since the debut that people, in the most, I think, we saw people increase in they actually gave a who held the belt. Because now it included drama. Demon Mama was treating it the whole time, and I honestly thank her in a way for how that situation went down, because her deep want to see that have that belt, Vadim in her corner fighting for her to get that belt, the judges, the controversy, it was a real Montreal screw job, and it made people give a about that belt. And that show was so fucking important for the show. Not to mention, I haven't been milking this shit like a motherfucker. I've been playing the long game to make this belt mean something. It's when the belt changes, it doesn't change every other day. There's only been 2 champions, Vaush and Destiny, up to this point, 6 months each. That is a decently long title reign, definitely when you think of how fast news moves in our space, right? When the title changes hands, I don't want it to just be like, oh, it changed hands again for the 5th time this month, right? You need to invest in like big shows and big things that bring people in. I want it to mean something. And thankfully now with tag team belts, we can actually, I think, have more action of a championship quality and a championship level. And it gives us so many more options to like mix and match people with branding and marketing. And like, if you look at the, can I talk about I'm sorry, if you want me to leave, I'll leave at any point if I'm just rambling to lie. Look at the tag team championships. Tell me what you noticed about this, about the people involved and how their tag team would work. Can you give me any ideas?
I mean, for one, 2 of them aren't gonna have face cam. Well, I guess you could kind of have a face cam for Eris, but I don't know. They're all white. I don't tell.
Okay, let me tell you something. They're basically the same. They're the same people, just opposite in a way. And what I mean by that is Fabian Liberty is a super aggressive, super hardcore, constantly insulting you, aggressive person, but he knows how to like make his points very succinctly, and he's really good at that, and that's how he goes. And he's paired with Last Username, a very soft-spoken, a very much more polite, very like, more coordinated, but extremely intelligent partner. So they yin and yang that. Chud Logic is an extremely aggressive, extremely insulting, extremely hardcore guy that makes his points extremely succinctly. And he's paired with an extremely soft-spoken, an extremely nice person, somebody who's extremely intelligent, knows how to make their points also succinctly. They're the same tag team, just reversed on the political spectrum, and their yin and yang attitudes is what makes them both, I think, great for the tag team division and perfect for the tag team championship debut match. I could go out there and I could just bring in as many big names as I want to, right? I could go out and be like Real Ranton and Kraut. Let's see, maybe Kraut would be interested in it. I could try. Maybe I could convince them all, and I could make this a bigger match when it comes to like the people watching. But this is going to be a wrestling purist match, a debate purist match, because you're going to see how these tag teams work together and how their gimmicks work. Not to mention how fun their gimmicks are. Toontown and Market Justice Warriors, finding another layer on top of that yin and yang to like make them about. Market Justice Warriors, brilliant, by the way. I love the comedic like angle to that. But Toontown, I love it because I also get to make fun of VTubers with that. So it's I'm so the tag team championship debut of the tag team belts, which the tag team belts are coming in and they're fucking beautiful, but they're also specifically distinct from the championship belts because we want these to be seen as 2 things, 2 separate things. The color of the strap's going to be different. We even got different assets for it. Of course the lettering's different. And the shape of the metal is actually different too. We went for a different design on that. And so we're trying to distinct. Man, I have just so much. I'm so excited.
I'm actually curious. Do you know how heavy the belts are, like weight-wise?
Well, yes. All of them come to me before I send them to anyone because I want to do a last-second like quality inspection every time to make sure. And it's good to take photos with it and get ready for promo material and like show it on stream, show it off. And they're decently heavy. These are not cheap belts. So, these things cost a lot of money. And I'm saying that I would say if you just look at like the revenue that I make from this stream, I'd be lucky if I break even on this. And
Mm.
a lot of it is just belt costs.
Dude, I don't know who the you get to make these belts, but they're just like, why the is this guy buying so many fucking belts? Like, what is this guy
to be
doing?
fair, I've got the only belts I've had to buy so far have been 4, 2 for tag team and 2 for championship. Not too much. I should probably get another championship one on standby, but it's just they're costing so much. If I buy another belt right now, I think they're gonna send me an email like, dude, actually, I think you need to like calm down.
They probably think you're using like the material from some other nefarious purpose or something.
Yeah, or like that they're gonna be like, yo, is the WWE just like like have a training program or something? Like that's what people
contracting you for outsourcing the belt in production. Like, what is going on? Like, it's pretty. I don't know. I'd have to view that as so weird from the producers that like it's one of those things where it's like, dude, you gotta think that like he's using these parts for something else or something. It's like there's something weird going on. Nobody needs this many belts.
100%. And we're doing a lot of things to more just like stiff up. There's a lot of tiny details that people don't notice, like the HDC thing. Like I'm gonna be really hardcore on the HDC because I want it to be like a chant. We're working with audio technicians to like add like what I want to do, and I want to correlate the amount of like omega lols and like boos you hear from chat with boos that you hear while the debate's happening.
Oh, that'd be
and
cool.
So you'll and the more like whoa, yay, or something like that, and the more cheers you hear while the debate's happening. And it's on a sliding spectrum. So the more cheers, the higher the cheering, the more boos, the higher the booing. Right. And I'm working with these audio technicians. It's fucking complicated, but I'm trying to get it to happen. I'm trying to use a stream deck to do it. That's gonna be the cheaper way, probably my workaround. When it comes to music, we might just steal shit. I'm gonna be honest. The calls are getting like high in some areas, and the idea of hiring entire bands to write like 2-minute themes for intros is gonna be complicated. And so what I might do is go into old PlayStation 2 songs and try to find ones that match the most succinctly with the people we're working with. But I also want to. I think I'm going to pay for it because I think it's probably the best thing we can do. It's just going to be really fucking expensive to have 10. Actually, I think this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like 8, like around 8 songs made, possibly 9. That's going to be very very expensive, and I just need to find somebody who can do it at a decent rate and also match the quality that I want, because I just don't want some crazy but that's going to possibly be like possibly as expensive or more expensive than the belts, and I can't even use it to the same degree because if somebody's not constantly like working for us, right, then like so that's what I think I'm going to do is the people that I know will constantly probably come back and work for us, we make fully like fledged out songs, and the people that don't, we just use PlayStation 2 music. We just I remember ECW, which was a wrestling company, New Jack, one of the best extreme wrestlers to ever do it. Dude got and tased people in the ring, stabbed a guy. Anyway, he had a song by 50 Cent. I think it was like Extreme Killers or Natural Born Killers. Really good rap song. And they used it on television, and they just never had the rights to it. And even and Paul Heyman used to brag about it. You know why we do that? Because we're fucking certified G's. We just fucking do it. And that's how he would go off about it. And I love that way he promoted the company. So I guess for me, it would just be like that, but with PlayStation 2 music, that we're doing everything we can to make this thing succeed. We're breaking copyright law left and right. No more than Hassan is. And just like boom, 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 just like having fun with it.
Okay, I gotta ask, why PS2 music?
Because the thing is with video game music is less likely usually to get you copyright striked because of the like people like know that you play video games like on YouTube and like,
I see.
But if it's PlayStation 2, a lot of the copyrights on this nobody gives a fuck about, and they're from really there was over 6,000 PlayStation 2 games made.
Yeah.
Think of how much unused
Garbage.
and fire ass
Thank you
audio is
for the
from
11
that.
months.
That there's no way in hell I'm going to be copyright striked. I've used PlayStation 2 music as music background for forever, and I've never, ever for any PlayStation 2 song ever, unless you're talking about like GTA rap music, right, which is
Mm-hmm.
literally just licensed music, ever been struck for a copyright strike on YouTube and or Twitch, and it's fully monetizable. So that's why I probably use that for some of the maybe like jobbers or possibly even the full crew if we can find good music.
Mm-hmm. That's actually smart. Actually, a big smart.
Yeah, I mean, I I think about this shit a lot.
Yeah, it seems that way. It's very elaborate. So you have a whole fucking scheme for it.
For me, like this is I find this stuff entertaining for me personally because I have a deep love for wrestling and a deep
Mm-hmm.
love for this space and this specific thing because of what it did for me, and of course debate as a concept. And I think I want to see this thing like grow to like a behemoth. Um, there's something I'm going to be saying the day of, and I'm not going to tell you what the speech is
Mm-hmm.
because it'll give some stuff up that I'm not going to give up. But one of the things I'm going to be talking about, and it'll probably be the end of the show where it's given, we're going to have a pre-recorded message. It's going to be that there's three pillars in there's two pillars in political Twitch, and it's Vaush and Destiny, and everybody knows it,
Yeah.
right? But there's a new pillar. There's a third pillar, and it isn't me. It's this fucking belt in my hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's gonna be a whole thing about how this Hippy Dippy has helped make and break a lot of people. A lot of people wouldn't have the crowds or things they have without Hippy Dippy, and there's whole crews and people who pay like get their bills paid off of Hippy Dippy,
Mm-hmm.
and and we're going to continue to build it up until it's the biggest pillar, and not one person can claim it, but a whole crew of people can claim that they're a pillar because they're all holding this belt up together, and the whole like, and it's like a whole thing I'm going to go on, but yeah.
It's gonna be pre-recorded. You're gonna pre-record it.
Yep, pre-record it because if I tell you too much, then it's gonna give away shit, and I can't give away shit.
All right. I'm excited. I'm excited.
But you would never participate in a Hippy Dippy event.
I would never do that. I'm kidding. I probably at some point will because I'm not like super against it. It's just like I'm fucked up, dude. I can't stand this format. It would definitely be better for me in comparison to like panels because I don't like panels really anymore.
Like a 1v1. Well, yeah, that's the thing. If you refuse to do this one now, or if you refuse to do like Hippy Dippies generally that have or formats like this, then I feel like the excuse of I don't like panels doesn't work.
Yeah.
Which is the new excuse you give me. Before it was timing, and then eventually it was the panels.
Well, timing.
Now,
okay, timing timing was legitimate. Okay.
Yeah, but I worked around it. I was like, okay, well, what if we work around it this way, and I give you everything, and you then said, well, what it really is the panel, and I'm like, okay.
Okay, timing was a legitimate concern.
You told me this for real. Okay, you can't pull my chain.
All right, okay, all right. Okay. Dude, listen, timing was a legitimate concern, right? And so was the panel shit. Do you want me to list off every problem?
If I do this shit every day of the fucking week and I get up fucking tired as if I'm scheduling fucking weeks of fucking stuff to have something like this happen, you can show up for a fucking hour, okay?
I'm gonna be honest.
Past your bedtime, an hour past your bedtime,
honestly,
Ralph.
I've used you multiple. People in my chat can attest this. I use you multiple times as a streamer that does actual real fucking work, not WOMEGALORK like I do. And I could not ever fathom doing half of this that you do, and I refuse on principle. So comparing you to me and your workload, listen, I know you work a lot. I'm a lazy bitch. I ain't doing half
7 days a week.
Yeah, f that. That sounds lame. That sounds so lame for me. Why would I do that? I'm so lazy, bro. You're sitting over here spending money, fucking producing this show, putting your heart and soul to that shit, bro. Why? Like for me,
because I love to see the joy it brings people, man.
Yeah,
I love to see people like actually not only myself having an interest in it, but seeing how people fucking react when I see chat light up. When they see the production value skyrocket and they fucking look at it and they see a theme come out, either for the I remember the infrared Destiny debate, and while the debate could have been better because infrared mic quality was garbage, and his Jackson Hinkle moment could have been so much cooler, and he fucked it up, right?
Yeah, it could have been a lot
when I
cooler.
saw people getting excited, super fucking excited over the 1 second, let my mind reaccumulate for a second. Getting excited over seeing those like Titantrons and the production value and them getting hyped for this as I did the shoot promos and everything. That was so fucking cool. I'd love seeing that work received in that way and people excited for it. And so for politics, it's like very many in the same way. Like I want to see people like just do better. It's like I just have a passion for the issues and I want to just see people like I guess happy with this. I want to see people look at this and be like, this is the fucking shit, Dylan. And I'm gonna really f myself over on this show. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah? You
I'm gonna
talk
f myself.
how's that?
Don't worry about it.
I'm gonna worry about it, bro. I wanna know.
No, I can't tell you. I'm sorry.
Okay, well. I'm gonna know at some point. Somebody's gonna leak it. Somebody's gonna.
Oh, you'll
say
know.
something.
You'll know. You'll know.
Oh, I'll know. Okay. All right, brother. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
Nothing. Just like I would be really cool to see you like and retweet this now.
Yeah.
Since I gave you my passionate, heartfelt speech, and you look like a real asshole if you didn't.
it would look pretty bad if I didn't do it.
Definitely, since I've now brought it up.
Yeah.
And talking about like the homelessness and like
You know what? You saying it makes me not want to do it. Yeah. You know what would happen? What would you say? What kind of drama would we start?
I would just be sad, Rel, and there would be no drama. I would just be sad.
Oh, well, come on, bro. How am I supposed to farm content if there is no drama, man?
I'd just be like,
bread and butter.
Man. I would just be like, oh man, I really liked Rel. I thought we were friends, and then
all right, you're pulling that card, all right? you're playing that.
I don't know what card you're talking about.
Come on, bro. I can hear the smile, the smirk on your fucking face when you said that, bro.
What do you mean, man?
I can hear it. All right, brother. Much love. Okay, I'll see you later.
Okay, see you later, man.
Yep. Bye. All right. Just for him, okay, I will do my annual login of Twitter. Annual, okay? Jesus Christ.